So we use standing and sitting in the Alexander technique because we're actually teaching about movement, and we're teaching how to change habitual patterns of movement that could be either limiting you, like if you're an opera singer or an athlete, your habitual tension could be limiting you from reaching full potential, or you could be causing yourself back pain or headaches or other issues that come from using your body poorly or getting causing stress in the way that you're using your body. And what I truly, truly love about the Alexander technique is that it's a hands-on technique. So we actually put our hands on people, and instead of sort of issuing instructions about do this with your shoulders and do that with your rib cage and put your chin somewhere, we actually help and guide the person. And the way that we're doing it is that we're sending a message to overcontracted muscles to stop doing that, basically. Like, don't overcontract, because that's not what we want. We want you to go to a lengthened, decontracted state, more neutral. You know, we carry huge amounts of tension in our bodies, and that tension just sits. We don't know how to release it. And so that's what an Alexander teacher begins with, is getting overcontracted, tense muscles to release. And when a muscle releases, it lengthens and widens. And this is actually visible physically. Now, of course, Neil has had a long, long time being an Alexander student and an Alexander teacher, so he isn't going to be particularly what we call pulled down. So I'm going to ask him to demonstrate what pulled down looks like. So Neil, if you'll just deliberately pull down so that people can see what we mean by that. And so pull down even a little bit more. Now pull your chin, and then most people, they retract their heads, and then they go from there to sitting. Yes. So if you'll sit, Neil, like that without hurting yourself. All right. So not to hold that. Very uncomfortable when you've learned not to do that. So now we'll do that again. Yeah. And what the Alexander teacher does is they get you to lengthen up like this. And so actually, what you can actually watch people lengthening upwards as they do get their cells in better shape. And that we call going up. And this going up versus pulling down is very important dynamic in the Alexander technique. And then the other dynamic that we look for is to free instead of fix. So usually people fix their heads and you can't turn them. But Neil's a good Alexander teacher, and he's allowing me to turn his head. And now I'm going to stop him from pulling his head back as he goes to the chair. And if the weight of the head release, hips, knees, and ankles bend, and he reaches the chair in a smooth and flowing motion that does not cause any neck tension, increase in tension. And the thing to remember or to know is that if you tip your head back slightly, so Neil, if you just demonstrate, this is what we call that pulling the head back. When you do that, you're compressing the spine with the weight of the head. And the moment you reorganize that and you let the head go to what we call head forward and up, then that spine can lengthen. And you can come up out of the hip joints. There we go. That's great, getting that length there. And this gives a sense of lightness because we perceive our weight. Like if we pick up a box, we perceive how heavy it is through the kinesthesia of how much our muscles have to contract to lift the box. So it's the same for us in our bodies. If our muscles are contracted, our bodies feel heavy. And if our muscles decontract, we feel lighter. And so this is a standard experience for Alexander students, is that they can come in feeling down and heavy, and they walk out feeling up and light. And up and light is a very different experience of life in every way.
Yeah, I already feel much better than when we started.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So
Vivien, is that why the Alexander technique is popular with sports people and people that use their voice? So voice actors, singers, opera singers.
Absolutely.
Is that why it's popular? Because yes.
Absolutely, and it's taught in the music schools and the opera schools and the singing schools all across the world. In the colleges and the universities, they have Alexander teachers to help with that. And I thought I heard you say with horses, and I was going to say yes, horse riding is also a huge application for the Alexander technique. And horse riders will instinctively understand what it is we're doing here, because they know that the way they are organizing themselves on the horse is what communicates to the horse. So that is actually, horse riding is the closest to the Alexander technique if you want to compare from one thing to another, because the way the horse is receiving information from the rider's body is exactly the same kind of transmission as Neil is receiving information from me. And the information is coming from nervous system to nervous system. So that's from my from both my mind and my physical nervous system. In the Alexander technique, there is no split between mind and body. What you think is what you get, and that's something we must really understand. If we think there's another step when we're walking downstairs, what happens? We crash into the ground, because our entire being has been prepared by that thought for another step.
Yes.
We did not have to give any detail. All we did was that one thought, there's another step, and boom, we're crashing into the ground. And so that is the principle that we're understanding here, is to be able to think clearly. And that is one of the best bonuses for me personally from the Alexander technique. And so we do the standing and sitting work, and we get everything going, what we call get everything going. And what that means is we get the up direction to be moving somewhat more freely through the system. And typically in a lesson, we do about 10 minutes of this, what we call chair work. But as the student gets more and more experienced, we may do longer chair work and a few other things that are upright. But mostly in the beginning, and we can't demonstrate this part because we don't have a table here, but we put people on the table and they lie down in a position called semi-supine, which means they rest their heads on books, and they bend their knees and put their feet flat on the floor, and they let their spines lengthen out, and they use gravity to help lengthen and release the tension in their bodies. And you would want to lie in semi-supine for about 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes every day, if you want to change the way your back and your neck are feeling and behaving, and you want to decontract tense muscle. And if people want it, I do have that up on my YouTube channel, and it's a video called Quieting Internal Noise. So it's on my channel, which is Crystal Surgery and Crystal Healing Techniques. And you can see a picture of me lying down with my head on the books. And that is the video that will guide people through the semi-supine lying down position. And they can experience for themselves what the guided lying down of Alexander technique will feel like. It's pretty powerful. It looks like nothing's happening, but inside you've got all kinds of changes and those changes affect your heart rate, they affect your oxygenation, they affect every part of you. These are not small physiological changes, and they are not in any way insignificant. And there we are.
Vivien, are there Alexander teachers across the world? So anyone listening anywhere should be able to find an Alexander teacher to do the technique with them?
The Alexander teachers are spread across the world, and there are but it's a small profession, and there are not people in every city of the world. They're not, and of course they're concentrated in pockets where there are training courses. Then you're going to have more Alexander teachers there, and then you have very underserved places. But the internet is rich with information, and anyone should be able to find some kind of Alexander technique help, no matter where they are. And as I say, I do have that video clip, and we have a book called Guided Lessons, which is in the intro.
You do.
Show.
It is.
And that also gives a lot of information. So
the links to Vivien's YouTube channel and the links to her books, for those of you listening live, Peo will pop them up in the comments. They're also on Schapera.com and radiotoni.com. Look under co-hosts and you'll find all of Vivien and Neil's information.
Thank you.
So Neil, how's that feeling for you?
It feels absolutely wonderful. I feel more centered, more grounded, definitely going up in a nice, almost as if I've lost 20 pounds and feel more relaxed and elevated, like an anti-gravity. An anti-gravity.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Because we have gravity forcing us down. The gravity forces are down, aren't they? And we forget that we have that constant force down. Our body needs to be reminded to rise up and not be contracted and down. Yeah?
Absolutely.
And then, Toni, for people to really benefit from what you just said, I want to add that the thing is not to pull on yourself. We're not pulling to get this. We're actually releasing tension. So don't do anything that pulls, because people tend to sort of, I'll just get to where the camera can see me, they pull on themselves like this, but that's tense and you can't hold it. It's actually a question of releasing. So if you watch, people think they're supposed to put their shoulders back. But look, Neil's not putting his shoulders back. He's just opening up there under his rib cage. And that length is what's bringing, just let yourself come up there, Neil. That's it. There we go. So that's it. And it is a question of allowing. You've got to allow yourself to change. And that's what the Alexander technique is about. It's about change. So I don't know if you want to talk more about the Alexander technique, but otherwise I can explain how this turned into crystal healing. And
I was going to say the next that it's your healing, your journey as a healer started with the Alexander technique and then progressed into all the energy fields, development of your intuition and telepathy. So that was exciting for us to talk about today as well, that journey that started with Alexander technique, what we've demonstrated for the audience, and has progressed into this energy field and healing work that you do now that is so powerful, Vivien.
That's right. So let me demonstrate. What happened was that one day somebody asked me to show her what the Alexander technique is, and this was in not a social setting. We actually were attending a little workshop, and it was a break, and we were talking about what we do. And she said, "Will you show me the Alexander technique?" And I took my hands like this, and I couldn't get them onto her body. I was there, and I had to literally push through. So it was my first experience where I went to give an Alexander lesson, and I started to experience something else over here, and I started to be able to feel that there is something surrounding the physical body, and that it's not to do with the Alexander technique, which is very strongly psychophysical, so mind and body. And there was something in addition to mind and body that I was experiencing.
To that.
And additional to that was I was starting to have these odd experiences of reading my students' minds, where I would think something and then later the person would tell me something, and I think, but I just heard that already.
Yes.
And the most poignant one was when I asked a student of mine, and I was very young, I was a new practitioner, and I was holding his head, I was picking up this other information, and I said to him, why does it seem like you've got no legs below the knees? Because I was holding his head, and when I tune in, then I can feel through Alexander technique, I can feel all of a person, and I can track everything that's going on in their bodies. Not everything, but what I can need to track, as it were.
Yes.
So I was holding his head, and I said, why does it feel like you don't have legs below the knees, like your legs are cut off just below the knees? And he said, because when I was 5, they wanted to amputate both my legs. And my uncle came to get me from the hospital and carried me out on his back. And he said, I will heal this boy. And I was innocently asking this question, why can't I feel your feet and your lower legs? And so, something had happened when and at this point he was about 28, 29 or 30 years old, somewhere around there, and this had happened when he was 5. But so again, there was something of, I could see his legs, I could see his feet, and yet I couldn't feel them. So there was something else going on that was more than physical or with the mind. There was another layer that I was encountering, and it was coming through pretty strongly. And then another quite nice story is about, I had 2 clients, one after the other, that were very different from each other. And the male was Greek, and he was a karate instructor, and the woman was very light. She dressed in all white outfits, like Indian white outfits, and she played the cello like an angel, and she had this almost angelic or fairy-like quality. So I had this big, strong Greek guy who was a karate instructor, and then this light, airy, fairy cellist. And as the guy left and the woman came in, it was so strong. The energy change in the room was so strong that I spun around and fell down on the chair dizzy, because I was so, my head got turned around by the energy switch. And so again, it was just in front of me that there is something else as well, not just the physical body, and not just the psychology or the mind. There's more than that. I could not get away from
energy.
it. My face all the time. Thanks.